Podcast. It's Friday. We have actual NHL hockey to talk about today, and we're excited to get going on that. Plus, Brady Tkachuk gets a big deal in Ottawa. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. Sneaky Joe DiBiase is traveling. He'll be back on Tuesday, as always, with Mike DiStefano. But I am here with someone you are used to hearing on Mondays, Gil Martin from Locked On Isles. Welcome, Gil. And how does it feel to be here at the end of a week?
Well, it's always good to start the week here, so I might as well end it here. It's great to be here.
So glad to have you on our first Friday show of the regular season. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcasting platforms, and you can watch us over on YouTube as well. On today's show, we're going to talk about our favorite games of the week so far, some early trends, look at that broadcast on TNT and ESPN, see how they're doing so far, get caught up on that Tkachuk contract, and then end with the games to watch for the weekend. So, Gil, we've got games. We've got lots of games. Are you seeing any trends so far or anything in particular that's standing out to you?
Yeah, a few things kind of standing out for me. We know there's been a lot of scoring early on, which is a little bit of a surprise. And, I know a lot of people love a good offensive hockey game. I'm old enough to remember the 80s when an 8-6 game was kind of not that unusual. We're not quite there yet, but it's nice to see some scoring going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to live in a world where Tyler Bertuzzi has 4 goals in a game.
But he would like to do that.
Yeah, he's certainly had a good game last night. And yeah, the Columbus Blue Jackets just absolutely demolishing the who did they play? The Columbus Blue Jackets absolutely demolished the Arizona Coyotes. And for two teams that were expected to be at the bottom, that was a little bit of a lopsided performance. But 8 goals is nothing to sneeze at.
No, nothing to sneeze at. And unfortunately, I think the Arizona Coyotes will be on the wrong side of a lot of one-sided, high-scoring games. On paper, at least, they don't look like they're ready to have a great season. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Now, we also had some debut performances, a lot of rookies this season. It's going to be a really interesting Calder race. Mason McTavish scored in his debut for the Ducks against the Jets. Anyone else standing out to you early?
I tell you, that was the big one as far as I was concerned, and a little bit of a surprise and just nice to see. I mean, when you can do something like that in your NHL debut, that's a big deal. And they always say you never forget your first. And, when you have a big game like that, it stands out even more.
It does. I am looking forward to seeing what all the new guys bring to the ice this season, in addition to Mason McTavish. I gotta say, Gil, last night was really weird. There was some bizarro games. We're recording before the late games are over, but there's still just so much weirdness from last night. I want to start with that Tyler Bertuzzi 4-goal performance, Detroit versus Tampa. Just some all bizarro stuff. Larkin scores the first goal of that game and then gets tossed. He's probably going to get suspended for, punching someone in the game because he got boarded pretty hard. And then John Cooper just went off on the officials in that game. Completely lost it. And I think partially rightfully so, because, his guy got punched and then somehow Detroit ends up with the power play and then scores.
Yeah, it's crazy when things like that happen. And, the old cliche in hockey, so often they catch the person who retaliates in some of these situations if the referees weren't watching it right off the bat. And if you're a coach, I think even if you get tossed, even if you get penalized, there is a value over the long run of being the guy who protects his players. So if you get an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty or a fine or you get ejected from a game, your players, at least over the course of an 82-game season, they know you've got their back. So I think in the long run, that's a beneficial thing to stick up for your players like that.
It is. And, Tampa had played the night before as well, so in a pretty intense game. So I'm sure all of their emotions were pretty high as well. But I thought the other kind of crazy pair of games that went to overtime last night were some great early hockey going on, by the way. So that Rangers-Dallas game was, I thought, pretty phenomenal, especially the Rangers even though they lost in overtime, I thought they recovered nicely from their first game of the season and just really dominated a good stretch of that game, came back. Unfortunately, Klingberg is now out with a lower body injury. He left the game, and then Holtby also left the game. So we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, from a Rangers perspective, they looked so flat against Washington in their season opener. And, then to come back on a back-to-back game kind of a situation and play well, that's a big boost, because if you have two flat performances in a row to start the season, that self-doubt can start to creep in a little bit. So, get the point and have a good bounce-back performance. That, I think, means a lot to start the season.
It really does. And, another team in their second game, the Pittsburgh Penguins, they were up against the Florida Panthers, and that was an incredible game. So much back and forth. Jeff Carter got his 400th goal in that game, and the Panthers stormed back, beat the Pens in overtime. Aaron Ekblad with multiple goals. I am really looking forward to the Florida Panthers being a phenomenal team. They are so much fun to watch, and it's almost upsetting and I'm a little jealous because they are so much fun. And the Pens are just, doing what they do and putting in really good performances without their stars. And it's amazing when you get good hockey when the stars aren't there.
Yeah, and it was a very entertaining game. That's the beauty of it, and great to see entertaining hockey so early. Look, the Penguins are going to have a challenge early on without, Malkin and Crosby initially. So it's going to be a challenge. But, it's one of those things where if they do pull together and play well, this could bond the team early, and they can get even stronger when their stars do come back.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that we were told going into this season was that they were going to be more stringent on cross-checking calls. And I think we saw it in the preseason. How do you think they're doing so far now that the regular season is underway?
Well, obviously, I was watching the Islander game earlier tonight, and I definitely did see some calls where they're watching it a little bit more closely. And, to be honest with you, it wouldn't surprise me to see, let's say for the rest of October and maybe a couple of, the first week of November, for them to call it a little more closely and then gradually sort of back off of it as the players adjust to the way they're calling it. But when you talk about the NHL and, for the last few years, they've had that desire to reduce headshots and head injuries and dangerous plays. If you cut down on cross-checking, so many players get injured on plays that start out with cross-checks, whether it's the way they get hit by the stick, whether it's the way they hit the ice if they fall over. So I like this idea, and so far, yeah, I've seen a little bit more enforcement on the cross-check than what we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, and speaking of those calls, some of the games earlier this week had some really unfortunate plays in them, and the first one that comes to mind is in the Colorado-Chicago game where Gabriel Landeskog was suspended 2 games for boarding.
Yeah, and I think it was the right decision. Tough play. I don't necessarily know that it was an intent to injure, but you got to be responsible for, what you do out there on the ice. And I like the fact that the NHL was not afraid to suspend a star player when they do something that deserves a suspension. So many leagues, you see them be more lenient with the name players. So I was pleased to see that they were treating everybody more or less fairly.
Did you have any other favorite games so far from this early season?
Yeah, for me, it was exciting and great to see the Seattle Kraken get out there for the first time. And they played an entertaining game. They didn't win, but they came back, stayed the course, rebounded from a slow start, and played a pretty entertaining game. And I don't expect them to score a lot of goals over the course of the season, but I was very happy to see that, here's an expansion team playing quality hockey, not giving up, learning, the new system under a new coach with new teammates, and great to see a new team, 32 teams now. So I was happy to see that. How about you? What games stood out in your mind?
Yeah, I loved watching that game, and it was actually quite interesting to see Dave Haxtell make adjustments in a game. Like, who knew? But, I was especially, emotional when Columbus did the opening kind of ceremony to honor the memory of Matisse Kivlenieks. I thought it was just really well done, and, such a hard loss for the community there and for the team, and they just did a great job in honoring his memory. I thought that the Tampa banner raising ceremony, as frustrating as they are for me as a not Tampa fan, I think they did a great job as well and really kicked off the season in style. They always do a good job with game presentation in Tampa, so I appreciate that. And then the other game that was interesting to me was that Rangers versus Caps game where it was like built up so much, and then it was kind of a whole lot of nothing in terms of potential fisticuffs. But, Ovi is now 5th all-time in goals, so that was a pretty good takeaway from that one.
Yeah, it is. And passing Marcel Dion, that's pretty heady stuff. I mean, Dion's such a great goal scorer throughout his career with the Kings and the Rangers, and Ovechkin, look, we know he's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, but he just keeps moving on up the rankings, and got to give him credit.
Absolutely. Before we get to the Tkachuk contract and talking about the broadcast, I'm going to talk to you about Built Bars, and it's one of my favorite things I get to do as part of the Locked On Network. Built Bars are with me everywhere I go, when I go hiking or I'm just out and about. And if you don't know, Built Bars are a soft protein bar, but they taste just like a candy bar. And I don't know how they do it. They have so many amazing flavors to choose from. There's something for everyone, no matter what your tastes are. Some of my personal favorites are the raspberry, the coconut, the cherry barcia, and the salted caramel. If you're like me and you can't decide between flavors, you can order a mixed box and they'll send you 2 of each kind. But the best part is that they're healthy. Built Bar is great if you're looking to lose or maintain weight while indulging in that delicious treat. They've got 17 or 18 grams of protein and only 130 to 180 calories. They're low sugar, low carb, and they're great if you're on the keto diet. So go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, getting back into the hockey, this time the television side of things. Both TNT and ESPN had their regular season debuts in the studio and in the broadcast booth. And Gil, what are you thinking about their production so far?
I'm still getting used to it after seeing NBC do it for so long, but I was entertained. And I think they, for the most part, did a very good job. And I think they'll get better, even better as the season goes on. Look, ESPN, no stranger to the NHL. It's just been a while. And, Charles Barkley and Wayne Gretzky were entertaining in between periods with Barkley putting on the goalie pads and trying to stop the great one, which, not taking themselves too seriously, but still being entertaining. And, I give credit to Charles Barkley for being a good sport under the circumstances.
Yeah, the whole thing was really funny. I think, for me, TNT's panel is just one person too many. And I get what they're trying to do, but there's not enough room for everybody to get their shtick in. And so to me, it's a little bit awkward. It's also all men, which is, not ideal for me, but I do think that, from a production quality, they really know what they're doing with the NBA and what they've done in terms of bringing that energy and that attitude over into the broadcast, I think is great. I'm a little worried about Wayne Gretzky's hair. I think he needs to just let it go. Be natural, Wayne. Trust me. It'll be fine.
Wayne. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But
let your hair down, as they say.
Yeah. I did think he did a good job on the broadcast, except for that awkward part where they were interviewing him and 2 goals were scored. And Ovechkin, that's when he got that goal to go into 5th place. It was very awkward, but they'll figure it out. They'll absolutely figure it out. On the ESPN side, love that theme. I'm so excited to have it back. And that piece that they put out in terms of the making of the theme by the composer with the Justin Bieber voiceover, I thought was really phenomenal.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well. And it is great to hear that theme again after so many years. And it was a nice piece. And Bieber is Canadian, so you certainly have that, that love for hockey that, maybe not everybody knows. But I'll tell you, it's an opportunity for the NHL to have these 2 new broadcast partners. It means more money. It probably means more exposure. And even just getting on SportsCenter more often and having more clips from the NHL, I think that'll be a positive for this league. And production quality, as you mentioned, was good. As far as what you said about it being an all-male lineup there, it's 2021. It's time to, there are plenty of qualified women out there who know their hockey. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I think ESPN did not a great, but a much better job of incorporating a little bit of, some women into the broadcast. The TNT panel is diverse, don't get me wrong, but I loved having Emily Kaplan behind the benches or between the benches for the ESPN broadcast. I thought she brings a really fresh perspective to that role. And honestly, I think Keith Jones does a better job between the benches as well than in studio. I think he's much more suited to that role. So I was really glad to see him shine there as well. And, I think there's some things that they could get a little better at in terms of information on the screen. Having shots on goal might be helpful and just adding a few extra touches that don't interfere with what you're seeing, but provide some useful information.
Yeah, and I think that'll come over time. I think as they do more games and get more feedback and look into that, I think we'll see, improvements and additions to their broadcasts. And I'm excited about the potential here. I really, really am.
Me too. On to the big news of yesterday. Brady Tkachuk in the 11th hour, just a few hours before the Senators dropped the puck for the season, signed a 7-year, $57.5 million deal. The cap hit is $8.214 million per year. And he did not play in last night's game, but he waved from the press box. So there you go with that. Brady Tkachuk led the Senators last season with 36 points, 17 goals, 19 assists in 56 games played. And so at the end of this contract, he will be a young 28 years old and a UFA in 2028. So what are you thinking about this deal?
I think it's a win-win when you look at it. You know, you're locking up one of your best young players if you're the Senators, and that's always a good thing. 7 years, that means you can kind of build around Brady Tkachuk. And yet on the flip side of it, from Tkachuk's standpoint, yeah, you gave up some arbitration years and some UFA years, but when you do become an unrestricted free agent, you're still only going to be 28, still sort of at the back end of your prime. And I think that gives him an opportunity, in addition to getting good money here and getting some security with a 7-year deal. In 7 years, when this expires, he'll have the chance to make an even bigger payday, assuming the cap keeps going up. And I think it's a win-win for both sides.
I think so too. And, you know, some might say that Tkachuk should have gotten a shorter deal because Ottawa, and people just assume that Ottawa is always going to be a hot mess. But I think they're doing some good things behind the scenes. They have a really good prospect pool. And, you know, so for him to commit to the Senators for 7 years, I don't think is a bad thing for Brady Tkachuk.
No, I agree with you. And, you know, he can now be the foundational piece for this team going forward. And if they don't build around him to his satisfaction, he could always hold out. He could always demand a trade. You know, this isn't the pre-free agency era where, you know, either you play for what we tell you you're playing for or you don't play at all. So I like this, and I think it speaks well about the Senators organization and the fact that one of their young stars has enough faith in the organization to sign this long of a contract. So, yeah, I like this deal overall.
Dom Lesheshkin, who is a master at coming up with comparables, put out a chart on his Twitter. And, you know, the top comparables for him were Evander Kane, Leon Draisaitl, Max Pacioretty, and Mika Zibanejad, also Boone Jenner, and the old Michael Grabner deal, which I don't know if that's as relevant these days. But, you know, I do think that if you look at Leon Draisaitl's deal and how he's progressed, that would be the top ideal situation for Tkachuk and for the Sens. And then maybe Pacioretty is more of a mixed bag, and Mika Zibanejad is more likely where he'll end up. Probably.
You know, the concern you always have when you sign a young player to a long-term deal, do they lose that hunger? Do they lose, you know, because they feel so secure and they don't feel the urgency? You know, so we've seen so many players do well in their contract year when they're about to hit free agency or about to negotiate a new deal. And then, you know, the question becomes, Brady Tkachuk, what is his psychological makeup like? And will he keep the pedal to the metal, so to speak, even though, you know, he doesn't have to worry about job security and money for the next 7 years?
Yeah, I think it'll be good for him in the sense that, you know, in these early years when the team is still building, he can just have fun out there and do his thing and play his game without any worries, and then allow sort of the pressure of a theoretically improving team to slowly build. And then by then he'll just have his style and his game dialed in. And I think that's really what Ottawa is looking for.
Yeah, and you got to figure, let's say it takes another 2 or 3 years for Ottawa to really start to build a great team around him and a contending team around him. By then, he's right in the middle of his prime. I mean, that's, if he's 23, 24, 25, you're going to get your best years out of him right about the time that this team is hopefully coming together.
Absolutely. All right, so when we come back, we will look at the weekend ahead and what games we're excited to watch.
Yeah, and I'd like to take this opportunity to tell everybody about Bet Online. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron right now as teams are back for another football season. And as always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this year. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, betonline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything pro and college football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. And don't forget to use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. That's free money to use at betonline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football, basketball, boxing, even hockey, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the great offers available for the 2021 season. Don't forget that promo code LOCKED ON, Bet Online, where the game starts.
All right, Gil. So you are lucky in that the Islanders have already had a game this season. The Flyers have not yet begun their season. They do tonight versus the Canucks. So that is the game I am most excited about this weekend, of course, because it's opening night. And the Canucks are my Western Conference team. So it's always interesting when the Flyers start out against my other favorite team in the league. And did I just admit to being a Canucks fan? Maybe. But it's going to be a real interesting one because the Canucks are, I think, in a similar boat to the Flyers in terms of just having some unanswered questions right now. And the Flyers, lost a bunch of guys to injury and are kind of patching up the lineup going into opening night. But I'm going to put in a plug for one of my favorite guys, Max Willman, making his NHL debut for the Flyers tonight. He was an undrafted player, got an ECHL deal, and, made his way to the Phantoms in Lehigh Valley. The Flyers AHL team did a really good job there, got a two-way deal, and now is getting this call up. Like, what a path.
You love those stories. I love those stories. I mean, when you have a guy who seemingly, does it the long way, the hard way, works his rear end off and climbs the ladder like that, you root for players like that. So, yeah, it's a great story, and I wish him all the best, except when he's playing the Islanders, of course.
Of course. So other than that, on Saturday, your Islanders are playing the Panthers, who we talked about as one of the fun, exciting teams of the season.
Yeah, and that's an interesting contrast in styles in that game because the Panthers have so much offensive explosiveness up and down that roster. Barkov obviously coming to mind, but so many players who can put the puck in the net, and the Islanders are that defense first. Don't let them get too many shots against your goalie kind of a team. So you sort of have the two strengths going up against each other. Islanders need to bounce back after a disappointing start Thursday against Carolina. So a little more pressure. And, the Islanders, this is game 2 of a 13-game road trip to start the season. That's not easy.
No, waiting for the new arena to open. So, yeah, it's probably difficult on the team, but there is, a light at the end of the tunnel, at least, that when the building will be ready. And I think the goaltending battle in that game will be interesting to keep an eye on as well.
Absolutely. And, the Islanders don't have Semyon Varlamov, so it's going to be Ilya Sorokin probably again. And but Sorokin, I'll tell you, look, he's won a championship in the KHL. He played very well for the Islanders last year, not so great in the first game, but you didn't get a lot of help. It should be a very good goaltending matchup.
Another game I'm intrigued by is Dallas against Boston. Now, Dallas is coming off that overtime win against the Rangers, a little banged up, but I feel like these two teams are both teetering on the edge. And Dallas is teetering on the edge of potential that's unrealized, and Boston is teetering on the edge of potential realized, but now maybe crumbling away. And like, how does that work up against each other in a game like this?
Yeah, you have two teams coming at it from very, very different perspectives. And look, this early in the season, you're looking to set the tone. So, you talk about teams that are teetering on the edge of, oh, it's too late, or, oh, we could do something big. You win early in the season, you change the perception sometimes. And you say teetering. You win a few games early and you feel like you're going in the right direction. You lose a few games early and, wait, what's wrong? The chemistry isn't right. We're not doing something right. These are important games. People forget it's 2 points in October, but it's just the same as 2 points in April, or at least the regular season part of April. But, good to get off to a good start. And I like the contrast you drew between those two teams.
Yeah, and interestingly, Boston is one of a few teams that will have not played a game yet until Saturday, which is ludicrous in my opinion. But Dallas will have a game under its belt already, like I said, and will probably, I think, go off to a really strong start, and then Boston will figure it out at some point early. But I'm very excited to watch this game. And then the last game I want to talk about is Calgary versus Edmonton. And Calgary is one of the other teams that has not played a game yet and will not have prior to this. So they'll be shaking the rust off a little bit. But the Battle of Alberta is always a fun one. And for me, I have Edmonton as definitely making the playoffs, probably in the number 2 slot in the division. And Calgary is one of my borderline teams that I think will make the playoffs. I think it's between them and the Kraken, to be honest, for the potential last playoff spot in that division. And so what is Calgary going to look like up against this Edmonton team that is on paper much stronger? And of course, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, are really strong challenges when you're up against them in any game.
That's a big challenge, obviously. So much explosive talent on that Edmonton team, but the defense needs to be a little bit more consistent. And, the one thing that I didn't understand when Edmonton had all those first picks overall in the draft or top 5 picks, for like 3, 4, 5 years in a row, they drafted the same kind of player. And I didn't necessarily understand that. And I think that's one of the things that have hindered them a little bit as far as the balance of their team is concerned. But I love the Battle of Alberta, one of the best, if not the best rivalries in hockey. And, those two teams could both be far out of a playoff spot. But if they're going up against each other, you're going to get 60 or 65 minutes of very entertaining hockey.
Yeah, I really think so. It'll be, I think, a fun night of hockey across the board. But yeah, those 3 games in particular are what I'm looking out for. Is there anything else going on this weekend that you're interested in?
I think we've pretty much covered it. It's I'm looking forward to it. I love the weekend. I love a good Hockey Night in Canada broadcast anytime I can watch that. And obviously I'll be watching the Islanders. So bring it on. First weekend of the season, and I love it. I absolutely love it. How about you?
Yeah, I will note that in the AHL for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, the Flyers AHL affiliate, the first woman official will be working that game on Saturday night. The AHL hired 10 women to officiate games this season, and so the first one will be Saturday night. So I'll be keeping my eye out on that as well.
That's excellent. I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Well, thanks everyone for listening or watching the show today. My absent friend Joe is on Twitter at Sneaky Joe Sports. He'll be back with you on Tuesday, and then he and I will be back next Friday to get you all caught up on the week's action. And you can find me. I'm on Twitter at @rmiriam. And Gil, where can people find you, and what's on store for people on Locked On Isles?
Well, you can follow us on at Locked On Isles, or my personal Twitter is at Ice Wars NYR VSNYI, and that's from the title of my book Ice Wars, which detailed the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers.
Excellent. Have a great weekend, everyone.